remember the moment that I looked at the test and saw that it was positive, and I was in total shock, not knowing really as well how my husband was going to react to it. And I'd got to go into the bedroom and show him, tell him the outcome of this test.
I was 18, it was my first time driving on my own. It was a Ford Focus Z-Tech 3-door, registration VF54FHC, and it was silver.
I remember walking into the room and seeing Ty and knowing that there was something not quite right. I didn't know what, but in the back of my head I had concerns.
I heard a scream and there was this guy trying to rape this girl. Then I woke up in hospital 2 weeks later. 2 weeks, I can't remember.
When Danny was 1 day old, he was in the special care unit, and we were going to visit him.
We had a lot of apprehension and anxiety during the pregnancy. We had some tests done, and the outcome was that there was a very high risk that we could have a child with Down syndrome. We went to the library and the bookshops and tried to get some books about Down syndrome, but in reality couldn't bring ourselves to read them, and felt the best way forward was just to wait and see what would actually happen.
It was the most terrifying experience at the time of my life, and the most liberating, the most amazingly liberating experience.
I asked my mum to look after Josh whilst me and his dad went in to see the doctors. Then the doctors then told us that they thought Danny had Down syndrome, and Josh witnessed through the doors the devastation of that news, and I can't imagine how that would have felt for him.
The guys followed me home in a taxi. Once I reached my home, just as I was going to pay the taxi driver, I noticed two men dressed in dark black clothes. One ran up to the driver's side of the taxi and held a knife to the driver's throat, and the other one came round to me and said to me, "Do you remember me?" And then started to stab away at me. He stabbed me 26 times, severing my main arteries and nerves. And after that, it just went into a blur, and that's when I woke up in hospital.
The age of 6 months, because he was adopted, it was put down to delayed development. So when we went to see social workers and paediatricians and talked to the school, it was all down to delayed development. So it was quite a fight really to get people to understand where we were coming from, and it was really quite a difficult time for us to go through.
The moment she was born, I think my husband knew, he's a nurse, and saw all the signs. He asked the midwife and she didn't answer him either way. So I think we both realised at that point this was going to be a different journey for us.
A young lad who said to me, well, he's got Downs, but he's going to be the best looking Downs boy that ever walked this earth. And that was so nice and so refreshing to have a positive reaction rather than a negative, pitiful, what a shame, what are you going to do kind of reaction.
I think when you first know that there's problems with your child, then you're trying to think who to go to, who to get to understand your concerns. So we went to doctors, social workers, paediatrician, and then when he started school it was the Senko trainer, and still it was still put down to delayed developments. This was like years and years on. This was like from 6 months from my first concerns to 6 years old. So, you know, 6 years down the line we were still fighting until we finally got a diagnosis.
It's not a poor little me environment. We have to, I want to drive, how are we going to do that? Here's the steps.
My girlfriend explained that I wouldn't walk to me after the doctors and surgeons had explained to me, but those words didn't mean anything, and my girlfriend at the time realised that I didn't really understand what was going on around me, and she was trying to reassure me. But that was just the start of a frustrating journey that I had with the system, as I call it, when I couldn't go home because of issues around getting into my flat at the time.
I won't deny it, it is a rocky journey. We had a lot of ups and downs, but in reality it's wonderful. It's a wonderful place to be, and we make a point of focusing on the positive and we get results.
The journey we've been on with Danny, and are still on with Danny, is very challenging but really good and really interesting. I went to a support group when he was about 2, which really helped me, brought me out of isolation, and made lots of friends, found lots of support from them. I ended up volunteering to run the group. Then when the funding ended, we decided to set up a community interest company.
And then once Ty had a diagnosis, I think you sort of put your life on hold slightly, and then it came to a point when I was ready to do something different, and signpost inclusion was an advert that I answered because I saw and I thought, yeah, I can do that. I can volunteer for an organisation that supports what I believe in. And from that we went on early support training. I missed out on what early support can offer, and I think I've seen it from the benefits from other parents have had through using it.
So you have to have this ethos of how do we go about getting on with life. I don't know what the future's going to be, but CP or no CP, cerebral palsy, no cerebral palsy, it's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun.
My name's Clinton Ferguson, and my life's dedicated to knocking down the 3 I's of ignorance, indifference and inaction. I'd like to introduce to you Fiona Holmes from Early Support.
I love early support because it puts the family, the young person, the adult at the centre, and it puts them in control. I love it because it brings all the elements of integrated working together. If you look at the 10 principles that underpin early support, it is the bedrock for good practice. It is a no-brainer. It saves money, not because it puts people in positions where you're cutting services, but because you make people use services more efficiently and it meets their needs on their journey. When early support goes right, what happens for families is that they look back and they say, everything's gone well. There isn't a problem. When families don't get early support, what happens to them is that they can find that coordination is a difficulty, accessing services is a difficulty, communication between professionals is a problem, and communication from them to professionals is a problem. Parents can say, when they get early support right, it helps me sleep at night. To have that powerful a comment said to you as a professional, just with such a simple, no-cost approach, makes you realise how powerful an approach early support is. What's sometimes difficult about early support is it is an approach, it is a way of working, and that is hard to conceptualise when you're used to working in a different way. But when you get it as a professional, I wouldn't work in a different way. It's brilliant.
I'm Corinne, and the reason I'm here today, I've brought Eleanor, my daughter. She loves craft activities and it's a lovely opportunity for her to join in with other children. But also, I'm working with the mainstream school she's at, Dickens Heath School, to embed early support. And so I'd like to introduce you to Jackie Nichols.
One of the biggest challenges for everybody in working with families and children is how we connect information and that we work with multi-agencies. And health and education are two very important agencies that need to work together. And it can often provide us with challenges because you can't access the information that you require in the time you need it. We've seen the frustration of parents and all the stress that can cause with lots of different meetings and things to attend to. And I think one thing the early support approach can do can relieve some of that tension, relieve some of that pressure. Ultimately, at the centre and at the focus of all of this are the needs of the child. And actually, by looking after the needs of the family surrounding the child and supporting the child, you ultimately support that child in continuing to make the best progress they can possibly make.
Hi, I'm Nikki Reeves. I set up Signpost Inclusion to support families who've got children with additional needs. We do lots of events like this one today, and we've been lucky enough to be supported by Solihull Council. So can I introduce you to Ben Lewin?
We're interested because councils don't just commission services, they commission services that are for people. It's not just about widgets. So services have to work for people, which means getting the relationships right. And early support is about good relationships. Relationships between parents and their communities, and the council's role is supporting and enabling that.
My name's Vicky and I'm here today at a play and stay session at the Renewal, and I'm here with my son Ty, who keeps hiding behind my back. I'd like to introduce you to Sue Barnett, who works at the Renewal Centre.
Well, my role here is to coordinate the different play and stay groups that we run across the church. And what's been really exciting in the last year is that we've worked together with Signpost Inclusion. It's been great because we all work to those early support principles, really very much about valuing the individual and making sure that every individual feels part of what we're doing and not excluded from anything that we do, and very much again about this partnership with parents, so that they really are driving the way forward, and so we can work together in terms of a plan and resources and support that they need.
My name's Chris Coombs. I'm here at today's event as the entertainment.
Hey, I put some new shoes on and suddenly everything's right. I said, hey, I put some new shoes on and everybody's smiling.